Welcome to From the 402. I'm Anna Bellinghausen, your host, and with me is Executive Director of Epic for Girls, Kimberly Thomas. Kimberly, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you have an exciting event coming up September
Yeah.
14th with Dawn Staley. We'll touch on that later, but I want to dive into Epic for Girls and what that means to you and how this all came together. What's that origin story?
Yeah. So Epic for Girls is really, well, first, it's an equal play initiative. So Epic stands for Equal Play Inspiring Confidence. And our target population is really those girls, particularly girls of color that are living in North and South Omaha, and providing access, resources, and safe playing spaces for them to experience the benefits of sports. And so Epic started about 7 years ago, really, like I said, grassroots. There were some folks that were seeing and experiencing the disparities that exist in sports across our community. And so a few of those folks really just got together, got some momentum, and found a way to start funding some of those programs that are existing within the communities of North and South Omaha so that girls don't have to travel to West Omaha or just be left out because they don't have the ability to get to West Omaha facilities, maybe South Omaha facilities to experience those sports. And so we partnered with different sports partners in those communities to make sure that they can sustain so that girls can continue to participate.
Yeah, and I know this is so much focused on confidence and building
hmm
that. Why do you think it starts in sports for a lot of girls?
You know, I don't know. My personal story. I mean, I was my mom and my dad were very involved in the community, and I think I got to experience a lot of activities, not just sports. But I think it just really teaches a lot of skills that we're not necessarily aware we're missing until you get involved in it, right? And so being around others, learning how to negotiate and be a team player and deal with loss and wins and really I think that's why sports really is kind of like a generator for confidence in the long term.
In Omaha specifically, where did you guys first target that need
Yeah.
for quality in that sport area for also, women of color and young girls of color?
Yeah, so some of the first programs that we've started funding. So we provide pass through dollars to those sports programs, and that was the initial work up until about a year ago when the organization hired the first executive director. But Nebraska Hoops Elite, Starlings Volleyball, Retro Hoops, a couple of those programs that had successful programs. We're seeing girls have success. They were competing competitively, but as they were getting older, it was getting more difficult, right? The travel teams are expensive. The disproportionate, uh, I guess, money distribution
Mhm.
across Omaha was making it really hard for these girls to participate, and so that's really where we started focusing was those programs first, and then we started working with additional individuals in the community who may have interest in starting an organization, had the skill set, but didn't really have the maybe the financial support, and then we build from there. So now we have 23 sports partners.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How much growth have you seen from day 1 to right now?
Well, I can't take any credit for day one, but we had about I think 3 to 5 sports partners for the first couple years, and then now I think we're starting to see also the expansion of the program, not just in sports partners, but the offerings of sports. So it was basketball and volleyball to begin with. Now we have boxing, golf. We have other sports that are dance is included in that, and so we're creating diversity of sport and of competitive level. So it's developmental all the way up to competitive. And again, we just want girls to be able to experience it, so they don't have to be the athlete, that's top tier, going to go to
Mhm.
D1, has pro aspirations. And then we're also expanding the program to include internships around sports, so sports administration, officiating, sports marketing, those types of things. So we just want to see girls in the spaces where men have always been. especially when it's girls who are participating. So making sure that they can see themselves
Yeah.
and have a future in that.
Yeah, that makes me smile because my biggest saying is if you can see it, you can be it. And
Exactly.
you don't realize growing up how much that affects you, right? Because
Hmm.
I mean, in my position being a sports broadcaster, I wouldn't want or even know I could do what I wanted to do if I didn't see Samantha Ponder or Aaron Andrews on the television
Exactly.
because you just don't know. And as a kid growing up, it's so important to have those role models. How important is that for you to see those out in the community and especially just more women getting that spotlight?
Yeah, I think we take that to heart particularly. So our board is all women. It's very diverse, and again, a lot of our board members may not have served on boards before, but they have experience or they have expertise in sports, and we want girls to see themselves in those positions. And so it's really important when we have the opportunity, we partner with women-led and BIPOC-led organizations. We want again that vision for our girls to be I can do whatever I want to do, and so removing barriers and making those things accessible is really a top priority for us.
Yeah, I know you also talk about serving the whole athlete, and I
Yeah,
like how you also include the mental health aspect
yeah.
because that sometimes gets ignored in sports. It's all about the body and the physicality of it, but you have to understand that your brain's a muscle too. Essentially, you have to treat it as well. Where's the emphasis been on mental health for these young women too?
Well, I think, interestingly enough, I think we haven't named it for a long time, but that's been a priority for many of our programs is to make sure and that they have a mentor, that they have somebody that is looking out for the whole kid. And again, like I said, we didn't really name it, but we know that these coaches and these adults are really important to them. What we're getting ready to launch is more of a comprehensive coach and athlete holistic kind of approach that is looking at um, how coaches can be their best selves and appear for their youth and their athletes, and how the athlete can walk in and ensure that that individual can at least recognize when things may not be working well. Not on the court, we're not talking about that, but our girls are walking in the door with many intersectionalities, and we want to make sure that they um, feel safe in their space, and that a coach can recognize when something might be off. And again, not have the solutions, but we want to make sure that we provide resources and training so that they can recognize those things and make sure that we don't contribute to girls dropping out of sport. We see that
Mhm.
really happen at ninth grade, especially in our urban areas. And so we want girls to maintain those positive connections because it contributes to healthier life outcomes.
I know there is a statistic about when girls hit puberty, they tend to drop out of those sports,
Yeah.
and that's when you need it the most and you need that confidence the most. It's really hard going through middle school and high school, as
Hmm.
we all know as women, and finding your identity. And a lot of that is found through sports. So I love the accessibility part of it and how you do focus on mental health because there's so much that goes into that. What makes it so rewarding for you and seeing
Mm,
these young girls and really getting to watch them honestly grow up
yeah.
too?
I coached for a long time, and I wasn't part of Epic when I was coaching, but that was the most fun part of my I guess, raising kids and in that time of my life, just seeing how a kid would get on the court, and volleyball was particularly my sport, and, seeing how they would get on a court and a ball would just go by them, and they're dodging it, to, stepping in front of the ball. And, there's a lot of metaphors that you can apply to life, is that you learn how to speak up, you learn to find your voice in those spaces, you really, just see them stand up taller and engage in a different way. And I think sports for me was that. I mean, I didn't play in college, but I see how it changes girls' lives. And
Mhm.
so that's what I think is most fun for me, is just being able to watch our athletes who are really good and do have aspirations be able to have that accessibility, and those that who just want a life skill, want to participate in, and they have that, and I think that that's the most exciting thing for me.
What's the vision for Epic for Girls? Where do you guys want it to go?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. So we are actually getting ready to enter some space where we're going to be working with our partners on developing our guiding principles in how we work more collaboratively, accomplishing short and long term kind of studies and impact. So we want our community. We can draw from national studies, but we want our community to see what their dollars are going toward, and I guess long range, we would love to one increase the amount of money that we're able to pass through to make sure that those programs are sustainable. So when that coach might be done coaching their child, or a group of kids that they've seen grown up, that they have a plan for how that's going to stay there, so that the next generation can experience those benefits. We don't need more nonprofits.
Mhm.
We just need the ones that are there to stay around and to be healthy. So we want to see all sports represented. We want to develop our advocacy piece a little bit more. We want to be in spaces where decisions are being made about girls and women in sports. So that could be at the school level, OPS. That could be at NSAA, legislative level. We want to make sure that we have a voice and a seat at the table for those discussions. And then, I think all the way around, we just want to maybe make this a national model. So we're looking locally right now, but then we'd like to expand regionally, statewide, regionally, and maybe nationally. How do we lift up marginalized populations and make sure that they have access to the same thing as their peers do, who maybe have more access. And so that's really, I have big aspirations. There's lots of partnerships that are, kind of on the edge, and I'm super excited about them because it's not about taking away from anyone. It's really about giving everybody that level playing field, and that's really what our motto is.
Are there any examples across the country that are similar to what Epic for Girls does?
There's models that. So I just worked with a group of University of Arizona students, and they did kind of an inventory of programs, and what we found was there were programs that were for girls, and then there'd be programs that maybe had an aspect of evaluating, but nobody had this whole holistic approach, where they provided the dollars. They were a primary or a major funder for most of these folks, and they were implementing sustainability techniques and components. So training, we offer that to our programs, making sure that they have the tools necessary to go beyond, not being dependent on one particular donor. So we didn't really find anything that matched that, and especially the mental health piece that we were trying to add. We could find pieces that were individual, and it particularly focused on girls in general, not BIPOC girls. So there'd be maybe a BIPOC program, but again, you'd be missing all the other
Mhm.
things. So I think like nationally, we could look at Women's Sports Foundation, but they don't really they don't really have kind of the same target. But that's kind of where we see ourselves in terms of um, distributing like information,
Yep.
impact, evaluation.
To be the jack all trades.
Exactly.
I love it.
Hopefully, but good at all of them too. Yeah.
I want to talk about women's sports because we've seen an uptick in that in
Hmm.
viewership. We've seen an uptick of women's role models. You think about Caitlin Clark, you think about Angel Reese. I wanted to bring up something that she said after winning the national championship in her press conference. She said, "I did it for the girls that look like me, be unapologetically you."
Hmm.
And I love that because it's just such a message for those young girls out there, especially women of color, that are looking for those role models that might not be there as much as they were in the past.
Yeah. I think that's really one of the reasons we're bringing Dawn Staley in, and why we're doing what we're doing is so often the voices that have been lifted up. And again, we all live in this system, right? It's our job to kind of inject change and highlight those things that we see are maybe not fair or inequitable. And so it's no fault to any particular person, but when Angel makes that comment, it is girls of color whose behaviors often um, uh, maybe evaluated slightly differently, right? We had the whole ring, pointing at the
Yep.
ring, and how Caitlin was really applauded and lifted up for doing that, which I love the competitive
Right.
nature of that, right? Do not get me wrong. I would be the first person doing that. I am such a hype girl like that. But when somebody else does it, there was all this negative connotation that was put towards that. And that also contributes to why girls drop out of sports, right? I mean, it becomes a thing where you're fighting also like this untangible
Mhm.
a fight. And so I think any ways that we can bring light to that and make sure that we are applying the same kind of filter and we're allowing girls to be competitive. I mean, I think
Right.
that at its core is
Just in general.
in general, like they didn't have a beef. And
No.
so so why are we creating
Yeah.
one? And I think that is part of a system that has just been perpetuated, that women of color are often villainized
Mhm.
for speaking up or for being, more aggressive. And so, kind of like bringing that down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just allowing them to express themselves
Yeah.
where, men throw a racket down on a tennis court and
Yeah.
that's okay. He's being competitive, but woman does it and she's
John
lashing out.
McEnroe did that for years, and we were just like, "That's John." You're
Yeah,
like,
like
"Yeah,
that's him.
right." And we can't just get like, "That's Angel."
Yep,
Right? There's a lot of other things that get put attached or, get attached to it, and so,
for
yeah,
sure.
I love that.
Yeah, no, she added at the end of it, she said this was bigger than me tonight after winning that national championship. And you do love to see that
Yeah.
because it's just such an inspiration to little girls out there that are just looking up, looking for their role models and love it. I mean, it was such a storybook ending to all the women's
Yeah.
sports seasons. I felt like it was one of the best years for women's sports. I mean, we just had volleyball day in Nebraska
Yep.
here, 92,003 people in Memorial Stadium for women's sports.
Yeah.
That's unfathomable as a child thinking that many people would care to come watch because you're always fighting just to be respected and put on the same court as guys.
Right,
But to
right.
be playing in Memorial Stadium, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I'm a volleyball fan, so, I love that. I love that, I've always said, if you build it, they will come. If you put the same access, resource, energy
Mhm.
into women, you will get that. I had no doubt that that would sell out and that it would be as successful as it was. Um, I think the argument has constantly been. I mean, I've been in this work for a while, and not just at Epic, right? And advocacy work in general, and the comments were always like, well, the men bring in more,
Yeah.
they bring in more money, they do this, and I go, but you put in more money, and it's a give and take. Nebraska women, volleyball has been successful for
And they
years.
have been making money. They're one of the only women's programs to make money.
Right, exactly. And so they've been making money for years, but they've been successful for years.
Right.
But when you look at what they have versus what the football program is given, they're completely different. And I'm not and they're both high class programs. Don't get me wrong. I mean, these are first world problems when it comes
Yeah.
to like what they have access to. But when you look at space, like I think, right, Devaney is sold out all the time. You can't get season tickets. So I think if you give them a bigger space, they will
Mhm.
fill it up. And it's the same thing that applies to men. And so give us the opportunity to make money. Give us the airtime that you've been giving, men's sports. Put us on channels that are accessible on regular TV,
Right.
not on, ESPN 3 that is, attached to some wild splinter of your cable subscription.
Right.
So I think there's also been some people that have really called out, the inequities, which have been amazing.
Mm.
I mean, I think about the March Madness women's
The weight room, yep.
a couple years ago, and I was just like, about time. I mean, all the time you see girls get the secondary gym, get the
Yep.
stinky gym, get well, boys get the shooting machine, and if you're practicing at the same time, you can't use the shooting machine.
Yep.
So it's all of that I finally and the fun part is when you see men who have daughters, right? And they're big sports guys, and then they see their daughters and they're like, "Oh, this is a thing." And
Mhm.
to see men turn into um women advocates
Yep.
in sports. It's
The girl dad movement was much needed.
yes, it
Like,
was.
I'm glad they're wearing the hats now. They're finally
Th
representing the women's
There's
sports. Come
nothing
on
wrong with
now.
it, right?
No,
There's
I
nothing
love
wrong with
it.
it, yeah.
Absolutely. Also, we had to talk about Dawn Staley coming
Yeah.
September 14th. How did that all come together and getting her as a guest?
Well, if I'm gonna be honest, one of my board members who, I would say was in part of this founding movement, was, "We gotta do this." Pretty quickly on, like, we need to have a fundraiser. I started last year in August, and we were, just getting a lot of infrastructure and foundational work done. And as we were rounding kind of basketball season, collegiate season, she's like, "We need to get Dawn Staley here. Like, we need to have Dawn Staley." And I'm thinking, you know, it usually takes like a year or 18 months to plan one of these
Right.
events, and we got to do it. We got to do it. And she reached out to the entertainment company and then was like, "Hey, here you go," and
Mhm.
handed it to me. And um, when it got down to it, we had about 5 months to plan it. Um, and it's going to be a great day. We see Dawn as one of those individuals who is our girl. Um, Many of our younger, players look up to her, but she also is recruiting kids who look like them, and she's been through every level and can also provide some sound advice, being a woman of color, and also going through all those levels and being one of the most successful um, women basketball coaches,
Yep.
having the success she's having, and having to deal with again some of the issues of I think they were getting called um, certain things on the court. They're more aggressive,
Mhm.
and again, you could see that those issues getting elevated when women were being, women of color were being aggressive on the court and being competitive. That was perceived a different way, and so she's really dealt with some of those challenges, and I think she's kept a somewhat cool head about it, which can be hard. And so we think that her message is going to be powerful. And so it came about because I think we had some really dedicated and headstrong people that were like, we got to do this. This is what we need for Epic. Epic needs to get on the map, and people need to understand what we're doing and how we can change sports and how they can help in Omaha. So
I'm so excited to hear her speak. I mean, anytime she talks in a press conference, I'm like all ears. Like, tell me everything you have to know because
yeah,
she is just such a speaker, so influential, so inspirational.
yeah.
I really couldn't think of anyone better than that,
Y
honestly.
Yeah, I can't wait to sit in the room. I think, we'll be in that first, meet and greet and, just really getting to kinda have conversation. Sometimes, conversations are so pressed, right? You're right after the game or you're at halftime or
Right.
you're in, like, a quick soundbite, and, I think we've all maybe seen her off the court in some of those, podcasts or appearances, and we can really feel what kind of person she is to her core. And I'm excited to be able to experience that.
Mhm.
I know in talking with her team last week, um, even just making sure that people get their photographs, if they're in the meet and greet, and they're like, but she's the type of person that's not going to leave people standing, so we need to make sure that we get through all the people because she's not going to leave. And just hearing that, it feels like success has come to her, but she hasn't let it overtake her.
Right.
And of course, she's everywhere and she has access to a lot of spaces now. And again, how she's navigating that is going to be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I'm so excited. How can people get involved? How can they attend? Are tickets still even available? Can you even still buy
I
them?
hate to say they are. The site is still live,
Okay.
and I don't hate to say they are only because we're actually over capacity right now.
Oh boy.
But that's a good problem.
Yeah, that's a great problem.
And I wish we were kind of like airlines and hotels where we could like oversell, right? And then,
Mhm.
because we know some people aren't going to show up, but we don't want to do that and then not have people have seats. But there are still some tickets available. If I would get them today, if you or very soon. But yes, we have a website, epicforgirls.org, and under the events section, you can see an Epic Day with Dawn Staley, all the information about the ticket levels, and then if you want to donate or contribute to Epic for Girls and the work that we're doing in Omaha, that link is available there too. Just follow our socials, see what we're doing. I think one of the cool things that we are working on is really developing a repository and a bank of photos of our own girls in Omaha and not using stock photos. And so when you're seeing posts about Epic, you're seeing girls in Omaha. And one that is again a confidence builder. We see that in schools and in programs that have a lot of resources. So we're trying to provide that space for girls, particularly in these programs, be elevated because they don't have a lot of those resources where they're getting hyped up, and so we're trying to do that, and I think that's a really cool thing.
I love that. Kimberly, to wrap things up, what's your message, biggest message to the community and why they should help, why they should care?
Yeah, I mean, I think Omaha, just like many other communities, has a long history of redlining and of like disproportionality. And again, we understand that the people existing today really didn't create those structures, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And so my message would be is this is our community. If we want it to be better and you are truly invested, then this is one of those things that you can do when all of the community is strong and healthy, then it helps everyone. It does, you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I think when we ignore the problem, when we act like it doesn't exist, that does nothing. And so many of you have seen and are avid sports watchers and participants, and you know how much that means to you. Just help somebody else participate in that. It really is an equal play, and we mean that we don't want to take away from anybody. We want all girls to feel supported in sports, and it just happens to be that black and brown girls have been the most disproportionately impacted by pay to play initiatives and sports becoming such a big industry. And so that's what we're just really trying to work on.
Well, Kimberly, September 14th, we can't
Yeah.
wait to hear from Dawn Staley. Thank you so much for your time. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely.